we're switching things up with a special creator spotlight. Instead of focusing on one creator, we're diving into some of the most popular crossovers between DC and Marvel Comics. When comic book rivals teamed up to create unforgettable moments. We'll also explore a few unofficial crossovers. We'll reveal a rare $1 million era comic, all this, and Darkclaw, the real Spider-Boy, and the Asgods. Let's take a look back and see how these two comic book giants crossed paths and made history. This is Creator Spotlight. Creator Spotlight, we're going to be doing DC Marvel crossover. First of all, looking at what you see right now, tell me how much fun this is going to be.
When I saw this list, all I thought was, usually every Wednesday when I go in after Monday, I have a list of books that I bring up from the presentation that I'm going to buy or look for. This one, I'm like, oh man, every one of these books I'm going to try to find on Wednesday.
There's only one you probably, except for the one.
Except for the one.
Yeah, that one I don't think you'll be able to get that one. Okay, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about it. But we're going to be talking about the Amalgam universe. We're going to be talking about the crossover events that happened prior to that, anything that happened after that. We're also going to be talking about those books that are technically crossovers, but they're not official crossovers. And there's some odd ones too. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the history of it. So DC and Marvel's first collaboration happened in Superman versus Amazing Spider-Man back in 1976. Technically, a landmark event where two heroes joined forces against Lex Luthor and Dr. Octopus. Shortly after, another major crossover occurred with Batman versus the Incredible Hulk in 1981, in which Batman uses his intelligence and strategy to battle the Hulk while also dealing with the Joker and the Shaper of Worlds. In Marvel and DC presents the Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans in 1982, the top teams of the era faced Darkseid and the Phoenix Force. Personally, that's one of my favorite books out there.
Oh, yeah.
All right. It was quiet for a while until the 1990s, where we saw an increase of crossovers with notable matchups like Batman Punisher in 94, Spider-Man and Batman in 95, and Daredevil and Batman in 97. The biggest event was DC versus Marvel in 1996, where fans voted on battle outcomes, leading to the creation of the Amalgam universe comics, a short-lived line merging characters like Darkclaw, Batman and Wolverine, and Super Soldier, Superman, Captain America. The last major crossover, JLA Avengers, that happened back in 2003, united both universes in an epic story by Kurt Busiek and George Perez. Since then, corporate decisions had prevented further crossovers until now, but their impact endures, keeping fan speculations and excitement alive for future possibilities. We're going to start things off with what we call the very first crossover event, which is an unofficial crossover event, and that's the Inferior 5 number 10. This book came out in 1968 for DC Comics. The high sale of this book is $239 at a 9.6, and that was on March 17th of 2022. Last sale of this book was $6 at a good, that's the condition, and that was the 21st of February. The average price of this book is $10 at a very good, while a 6.5 is the average, and that goes for $59. What it is, its cover depicts characters unmistakably belonging to Marvel, having suffered a humiliating defeat. In this image, we are seeing Spider-Man, which you could probably see right now, Mr. Fantastic, and what I assume to be the Thing.
And Human Torch there too.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, what's your thoughts on this one?
We're going to be saying this a lot in this segment, Izzy, but this is another one for $6. or even $60 for 6.5.
I can't believe that this is the first time they ever even attempt this.
Yeah,
And we're talking about Marvel DC. We're not talking about all the other companies. I'm sure it's happened prior to that.
yeah.
But Marvel and
It's amazing to
DC.
me that there's such a history of back and forth between the companies,
Mhm.
because I know that even in an early Batman issue, in the text, there's a mention of, one of the other characters from Marvel or something like that.
Mhm.
And I just love stuff like this. Like my
Yeah.
little kid brain is lighting up right now.
Yeah. Also, you see there is Namor. He's like, you can see his butt's in the air.
Yeah. It's not technically Namor, it's just his butt.
His butt and the little wing ankles. When I was gathering all these books and just learning a little bit about the history between Marvel and DC, they were pulling jabs at each other big time.
Yeah.
So Inferior 5, number 10, that was the very first unofficial crossover event. Let's take a look at another one. Aquaman 56. This came out in 1971 for DC Comics. A high sale of this book went for $315 at 9.6, and that was in June 2024. The last sale of this book was $10 at a good grade, and that was just a couple of days ago. The raws are going for about $12 at very good. Graded copies are on average is a 9.0 at $77. This is the first appearance of an algae creature sent into space that would later appear in Submariner 72. This is it's official, unofficial. It's a shared character.
How did that? I'd love to know the story on how that even happened. It must be the same writer, maybe, or the artist, or something.
I'm assuming that it is the same writer. I didn't bother to see for myself. However, this creature that you see on the cover is actually clearly in the cover. He will reappear. Now he appears again 3 years later.
Yeah.
So there is some, time. But at this moment, he's a DC character.
Yeah.
Right? At this moment, this algae creature is a DC character, and I guess he's a villain to Aquaman. We don't see him again till 3 years later, but we don't see him until Marvel shows him.
Yeah, it's very strange because, like you said, it's a DC issue. It's got nothing to do with Marvel until they print that other book, and then all of a sudden now he's part of that crossover. It's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. So let's take a look at our next book. Doctor Strange number 2. This came out in 1974 for Marvel Comics. High sale of this book was $516 at 9.6, and that was in April 2022. Last sale of this book was $12 at a very good. The raws are going for about $11 fine, while 9.6 goes for about $129. Again, another circumstances where we have an unofficial crossover appearance of the Green Lantern who passes out under the table after drinking yellow calamine. The tea?
Take that.
You know what I'm saying? So, when I read this, I couldn't stop laughing because it's so stupid, right? He drinks the tea and it weakens him because it's yellow tea.
I love it.
It also features Green Arrow from DC and Captain Midnight from Fawcett that are also depicted in that scene.
Amazing.
Here's some tea for you.
And what, he wouldn't know it was yellow when he was drinking it?
Imagine all he had to do was like take off his ring and he'll be okay.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. Oh my! And this is the second issue of Doctor Strange.
I know.
So awesome book. I definitely gotta look this one. Like most of these books are very affordable. So for me, I could go to a convention and just look them up and just buy them and then tell the dealer why I bought it. Because that's what I do. I'll tell you, it's like, do you know about this book? And they'll be like, no. And then I'll tell them after I pay for it so they wouldn't try to up the price. You know what I'm saying? It's just so cool hearing the stories. Let's take a look at our next book. We talked about the other one, The Savage Submariner number 72. This book came out in 1974 for Marvel Comics. A high sale of this book was $2,100 at a 9.8. I'm not kidding when I say that. That's how much this book went for a high sale. So somebody knew something. This came out in July 6th of 2024. However, the last sale, this book was $11 for a very fine. This book goes for about $15 at a fine. 9.8 goes for about $120. So that person way overspent it. And it's that same algae creature that appeared in DC's Aquaman 56. Same character. It turned out that this was a secret DC Marvel crossover issue. So this was done on purpose. And they did it on the final issue of Submariner.
That's awesome. I love it because you got it in, Aquaman and Submariner, the same creature. I love it. So cool.
And it looks like there was permission to do this.
Yeah. And, there had to be some thought because they put them both, they're on the cover of both issues, which, wouldn't necessarily always be the case. So, yeah, there's an interesting story behind all this, I'm sure.
Let's take a look at our next book, and that is MGM's Marvelous Wizard of Oz #1. This came out in 1975 for DC and Marvel Comics. A high sale of this book is $100 at a Raw. The last sale of this book was $75 at a very fine. Raw goes for about $50 fine. There's no recorded slabs. It is an oversized book. And this just happens to be the very first comic book co-published by DC and Marvel Comics. So this one's official. I'm just curious, why this book?
Like maybe they both had rights in the movie company and they had to co-do it.
It could have been, like a licensing issue or something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about like a backup story that has any of their characters or we would know that. But yeah, it's just a really interesting standout that they both come together for the first official time. And it's for a book that has nothing to do with any of their characters.
Yeah, and it's an IP still. So it's a popular IP. It's MGM's Wizard of Oz. So they're basing this off the movie. So this is technically in that adaptation of the movie that came out back in the 50s. Or even though I don't even know how old the Wizard of Oz is. It's so weird that this is the first.
Yeah. And I bet you this does not come up for sale very often. Like this is one of those books that you would find at a flea market or a yard sale that someone has it and they have no idea what it is.
Well, I think to the collector's market, because I'm familiar with this book. I was familiar with this book before we did this. I was very familiar with it. But to me, it was always like weird.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, this is the book you decide to be your first book together.
I know.
You know, I would have just said, okay, we'll do that later. Let's do this one now, just to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
But it's the first one. It'll be labeled at the first one. You never can change that. Let's go to our next book, which is the one that really matters. And that's Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man #1, The Battle of the Century. That's the official title of the book. It came out in 1976 for Marvel and DC. High sale of this book went for $1,200 at a Raw, and that was in January 2022. The last sale of this book was $150 at a no grade. The Raw goes for about $86, very good. While there is a 9.0, and it sold for $226, and that's what we call the average. This is what we call the first official company crossover event featuring Marvel character and a DC character. And of course, you're going to pick your flagships, Superman and Spider-Man. There's also a 100-page oversized crossover featuring Superman and Spider-Man.
Yeah, this one is it's been on my radar for a while to pick up. I love the cover. I mean, again, going back to being like 14, seeing these two characters and knowing about Marvel and DC. And that's something that we take for granted as collectors. Like, all you got to do is talk to any of your kind of non-comic people, or even if they're a little bit into it, they might like the movies. They don't know what you're talking about when you talk about, oh, that's a different company. Superman would never be in the movie with Batman or with Spider-Man. And they're like, oh, well, why not? It's all comics. So very, very cool for those of us in the know. Don't ever take it for granted. We know stuff.
Yeah. I have my copy right on the wall right up there. So I do have a copy of it. It's hanged up. It's not a great copy because it's not your traditional staple bound. So it's glue bound. So the glue came off of it. So it's not a good copy, but it's a copy that I love and I have framed up because I think it's just one of the coolest books. It is an oversized book. It's a big book. It's not small. It doesn't read like a traditional comic. They went treasury edition for this one. But it's so much fun. I love it. Absolutely
you
love
can
it.
get it in that omnibus of the DC and Marvel. It is in that, I believe.
There's also trades that you could get if you want something a little more feasible. The trades do exist. Let's take a look at our next one. And that's Machine Man 19, another unofficial book. This came out in 1981 from Marvel Comics. The high sale of this book was 1,509.8, and that was in February of 2021. Comic boom, of course. $19 for a fine is the last recorded sale. Book goes for about $15, and 9.6 goes for $138. This is a key as it features the first appearance of Jack-O-Lantern, who will eventually become the Hobgoblin. But it's kind of hard to see it because it's very, very small. In the cover, there's an overweight Batman and Superman.
Yep, they're right at the back, kind of behind the girl in white's butt, essentially.
Yeah, it's really minute, but it's Batman and it's Superman.
They snuck it in there.
Yeah, and they had to be overweight. What's the deal with that? Body shaming?
Because it's just showing that Marvel's in shape and DC's not.
So, fun book. Moving to our next. Oh, this is the big one. Okay, people. I'm about to say something to you guys that you're going to be amazed by. New Teen Titans number 6. This is a printing era book. Came out in 1981 for DC Comics. A high sale of this book. And I don't have an official date. I looked like crazy for the date, man. I couldn't find it. But it sold at a 7.5. It's a qualified grade, by the way, for $1.15 million. It is currently on sale on eBay. You can find it. If you want to look for it, it's there for $1.2 million. Now, why is it such a big deal? There's 2 in existence, and it's a Teen Titans number 6. Inside, it's a double cover. The second cover is Marvel 2 in 174. Now, during this time when this book was printed, it was in 1981, both Marvel and DC had the same printing house, and they would print the same book. They ended up making a printing error. They accidentally double covered the book, but the double cover was the DC was the cover, and the inside there was a second cover, and that was Marvel 2 in 174. There's 2 in existence that we know of. This is, beside the major keys, this has got to be the most expensive comic book out there.
I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go check mine.
Look, it's I know, it's so much, right?
I love it. It's so cool that things like this happen. And, like, think of it. If you were a kid and you did this, you would probably just rip the cover off if you had one. Be like, oh, it's the wrong cover. There's 2 of them.
Yeah, but you bought New Teen Titans and inside is Marvel 2 in 1.
Right. You'd be very confused because obviously that's not going to be the Titans.
and you know what's the worst part of it? You slapped it. You slapped it.
I know.
How could I see it now?
That's a tough call because you'd want to preserve it. So you'd have to go a different route, like a comic capsule or something like that you could take it back out when you wanted to, because yeah, you're right. Like why do that? I mean, that's kind of the thing personally that I think of is preservation, sure, but stuff that's on the inside, I mean, you'd want to show that off. Look, this is it.
So there appears to be another copy floating around somewhere. We don't know where it is. I haven't heard anything about it. There's only 2 copies of this book. This is one of those circumstances to me that doesn't make sense to make this book $1 million comic.
Oh, you could buy a lot of other better books for that much.
You could get Action Comics #1 for that money. We talked about it when we were talking about the top 5 books of the Golden Age. You could easily buy any one of those books. You might be able to buy 2 of them.
What's this going to cost? Like, what is it, 3% or more now to grade a book of this value?
My only curiosity is what justified this price tag. You get what I'm saying? And
somebody
the fact that,
wanted it. The market.
Well, even so, it's a double cover of a Marvel and a DC book. Okay, I get that. That's cool. But to make it $1 million book, that just doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
But it's been sold. It was sold. It was purchased. And it's currently on sale now. So if you go to eBay, I promise you, go to eBay, search up New Teen Titans #6. You will find this book for $1.2 million.
Million.
No denying. All right, let's move on to our next book.
I will be checking as soon as the show's over.
You go for it, man. I'm serious. It's there. I'll send you the link if anything.
If I show up at your door tomorrow, you'll know why.
Marvel Treasury Edition #28. This came out in 1981 from Marvel Comics. High sale of this book's $120 raw, and that was in September 2022. Last sale of this book was $14 at the good. The raws are going for about $21 fine. There's no recorded slabs. Again, this is another Treasury Edition. This is the second Superman Batman story. It also features Superman battling the Hulk. It is the first part of a crossover trilogy that began with Superman and Spider-Man #1, and it also continued to DC Special Series 27, which features the Hulk and Batman, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
I love this cover too. I love the painted design of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really cool. Another one that any of these crossover ones, these Treasury, I'm always on the lookout for them at Comic-Con.
I also like that they chose Doctor Doom as the villain for it. And Doctor Doom is not known to be a Spider-Man villain at the time. He's a Fantastic Four villain, so they just decided to give him a villain that's someone else's. Parasite obviously is Superman's villain, but why not? Why not throw in Doctor Doom, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So really cool book. It's part 2 of a 3-part story. Technically. It's a sequel more than a part 2. All right. Let's take a look at the last part, which is DC Special Series #27. This came out also in 1981 for DC Comics. Now, one of the things that they were doing was that certain times Marvel will publish it, and then other times DC will publish it. So even though it is a production of DC and Marvel, collaborative effort, only one of the companies will actually publish it under their banner. I don't know how the rights work and the license, if they just license it out or something like that. Not 100% certain, but this one was published by DC. The other one was published by Marvel. The first Superman Spider-Man, I do believe was co-published.
I'm going to check my Marvel Unlimited tomorrow and just search up Superman and see if any of them come up or if they're not allowed to put them on there.
Probably not, because it is a licensing thing. So this came out in 1981 for DC Comics. The high sale of this book was $330 raw. That was in April 2022. Last sale of this book was at $80 at a very fine, pretty good price. Very good goes for about $41. The graded copy goes for $130 at a 7.5. This too is an oversized edition. They just wanted to do oversized treasuries. I'm just curious as to why they decided to do that.
Yeah, maybe it was to have something that stood out separate from their regular publishing size, not to confuse, the young kids buying them into thinking one was Marvel or DC.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was more of a completely different animal.
Yeah. Well, there's also this price tag. You have a book that came out in 1981, and your price tag is $2.50 for books that are about 60 cents.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're paying triple the value of a standard comic book. So maybe they saw something in doing that. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm loving the Batman art on that. Well, all the art, to be honest, is great on it.
Yeah, it's a great cover. This is amazing. Like even the Hulk looks great. I love how the Hulk looks. I like this cover a little bit more than the previous one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at our next book. Marvel and DC presents The Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans #1. This came out in 1982 for DC and Marvel. This is the rare occasion that they both distribute it. This is a high goes for $204.09.8, and that was on June of 2024. Last sale of this book was $10. Very good. Raws goes for about $7. Very fine. Well, not very fine, but fine. And a 9.8 goes for about $120. This is the first crossover of the Uncanny X-Men and the Teen Titans. It is a wraparound cover art by Walt Simonson. It's the first appearance of the Source Wall, a final barrier between the multiverse and a cosmic phenom that is the delta of existence. All right. Before I even let you speak, I love this book. I have multiple copies of this book. I wish George Perez would have done it, but I love Walter Simonson's art in this book. Love it. It is so perfect to me.
Yeah. This if you don't follow like the Titans, you would look at this title if you're a newer collector, or you're more of a 90s or 2000s type person, and go, the X-Men and the Titans, why? But at the time this came out, the Titans were the kings at DC, really, in a team book. They were on top, and so were the X-Men, obviously. This book is awesome. I have a couple copies myself. I have one signed by Claremont that's graded. I have another one that isn't, but the thing to watch out for in these books is there's a centerfold inside, and you just have to watch out that it's not popped out.
Good point. George Perez, was he too busy? Yes, he was. And here's why. During this time, Marvel and DC were doing more collaborations. This just so happens to be the last collaboration that they've had in just an extended period. Why? Because the two companies couldn't see eye to eye with certain things. So this was the last one. So during this time, ideally speaking, it was intended that George Perez was going to do this book. But they gave George Perez Justice League Avengers to work on. And he began working on Justice League and Avengers during the time that this book was being released. Unfortunately, because of they couldn't see eye to eye on the story, they couldn't see eye and eye what was going on, so therefore they scrapped the plans. And the pages exist. The pages exist for Justice League Avengers. Years later, those pages went on sale, and they were purchased by Rob Liefeld.
That's awesome.
And Rob Liefeld, I don't know if he still has the pages. I'm assuming he still does, but he was able to purchase the pages from an auction house, I think it was, and he got the pages for the book. Now, from this one, this book is just awesome because you got Darkseid and you got the Dark Phoenix, and Simon's, just look at that cover with the Dark Phoenix, man. She looks perfect to me.
Yeah.
And they got Simonson to do the art. They got, of course, Claremont wrote it. But just like you said, in the 80s, these were the two biggest company mascots, right? The X-Men were leading the charge in Marvel. They were the #1 selling book in Marvel, while the Teen Titans were the number one selling book in DC. So you took the two biggest stars that weren't Superman and Spider-Man, and you just put them into this story, and the story was a good story.
Yeah, and the back cover, like you said, is amazing. It's a big shot of Darkseid's head. Looks so good. I love this book.
And you kind of could see it right now, but you got Professor X on the Metron chair, which perfect. Great storytelling. Let's go to our next book, and that is Legion of Superheroes, number 300. This came out in 1983 for DC Comics. A high sale of a 9.9 went for $175, and that was in June of 2018. The last sale of this book was $3. That's also the fair market value of the book at a fine. 9.8 goes for about $120. This features a cameo appearance of Garfield the Cat, who's not a Marvel character, but does appear in Marvel Fanfare number 9. However, there's a cameo appearance of Spider-Man in this book.
Yeah, and this one I didn't know anything about. I'd be curious if I can find this one to see if it's like just a panel or something like that.
Yeah, it's a cameo. It's just a simple cameo of Spider-Man. So they will throw, DC and Marvel will throw in these characters every so often here just to see if people are looking. But Spider-Man's in the book, so that's a crossover.
Yeah.
It counts. All right, let's take a look at our next book. This one's a good one.
Yeah.
Swamp Thing 47. This came out in 1985 for DC Comics. High sale of this book is $140 at 9.8. That was in June of 2021. Last sale of this book was $3 at a very good. And the fair market value of this book is $6 at a fine, while 9.8 for $91. This is the first team appearance of the Parliament of Trees, elements like Swamp Thing, but it's an uncredited cameo and cover of Marvel's Man-Thing.
Is that him in the left there?
That's Man-Thing.
I love it.
He made the cover.
This is one of those ones. I'm going to be checking for this on Wednesday. This is a book that's definitely in the bins. It's a higher issue count for for Swamp Thing. It's around. It's in your comic store.
Yeah, so it's one of those things when you look at it at first, you're like, wait a minute. And you take a double glance, like, is that Man-Thing? It's Man-Thing. Now, keep in mind, it's uncredited. So they cannot call him Man-Thing.
Yeah.
Right? Official, but, so it's an unofficial appearance. But there's no denying that's Man-Thing.
If I find the book on Wednesday, you'll be able to see it on my Instagram. I'll put a picture of the outside and inside.
So there you have it. Swamp Thing 47. What the? Number 3. I have to say it that way. What the? 1988 from Marvel Comics. High sale of this book was only $13 at a raw, and that was in July 2023. Last sale of this book was $3 at very good. Raw's going for about $4. There's no recorded slab sales. This is one that's a little bit of a shocker to me. And the reason why it's a shocker, it features a 2-page story titled Birth of a Hero, done by Todd McFarlane. And it's a parody of Batman. No, Bat, Man.
Yeah.
About how he chose his name. And it also features a cameo of Joker. So this version of Batman actually looks like a baseball player. Because he's the Bat, as in baseball bat.
The Batman.
And it does feature Joker. And there is a Robin. But what's more interesting is that it's done by Todd McFarlane. And this book is going for $13 on a high sale. Dare I say it? What the?
Yeah. I'll be looking for this, but I think this one would be harder to find.
This is one of those.
What the hell is even that?
Because how could this book be so cheap?
I don't think anybody knows about it.
Well, they know now.
Yeah.
So imagine a couple of weeks from now we do our top 10 and this book is in the top 10 list.
Oh, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? Because there would be no doubt that it was because of this.
Yeah, we got to get the major crossover event. So we got to get Todd McFarlane doing a crossover event.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. I remember when Duck came out. I bought a copy or two. I may have even owned this book at one time. But
I do remember the title, but I don't remember anything about this one.
It was Marvel's version of Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was. And it did feature Spider-Ham in it. So, yeah, this book is a dollar bin book right now, but it probably shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be a dollar bin book. It's a Todd McFarlane. I would take this to Todd to sign.
Oh, that's a conversation starter. I mean, how many times does he see Amazing 300 or whatever, right? But this, he's not seeing this probably in the whole
very
show.
rare for him to see this book.
Yeah, that would be something that I would definitely take for him to sign. I like to find like weird stuff like that.
Absolutely. All right, let's go with our next book. Superman 50, 1990 for DC Comics. High sale of this book is at $93 and 9.8. That was in August of 2022. Last sale of this book was $20 and 9.2. The raws are going for about $4 fine, while 9.6 goes for about $34. What's important about this book? Really, the importance is that Clark Kent proposes to Lois Lane, and she accepts. What's really interesting about this book, and yeah, a lot of people have talked about this, so this is not, it's not as rare as you would think. It does feature a Marvel DC crossover. Mr. Mxyzptlk reveals himself to also be Marvel's Impossible Man, and he claims he needs to visit his 4 friends. And the quote is, "Oops, sometimes it's just impossible to remember what I look like from world to world." In this issue, he confronts a group of heroes dressed in blue using dialogue from Impossible Man's first appearance, Fantastic Four 11 in 1963.
It's just awesome.
I knew about this one. This one I knew about.
This one I didn't know about, but it's amazing that they can pull something from 63 into a book written in 1990. I just love it. So cool.
But it made sense, right? That Impossible Man is in fact Mxyzptlk.
Yeah.
You know, and yes, to Black Spider's point, Superman does have the Kool-Aid Man, so that could be a crossover too. Oh yeah. You know, I love these books that they do these things. They don't get enough credit as they deserve because there is some fun stuff to it. If I was to slap this book, I would love to have that in the notes as well, because I think it should be the notes.
That's one of the things I don't understand about CGC is why you can't see what's in the notes or submit something that they can look into to verify or whatever. Like, doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Great book. It's a fun book. Obviously, you got the proposal, but man, Mr. Impossible, Mr. Mxyzptlk is Mr. Impossible. I knew it. Our next book is actually a real nice one. This is a nice touch. And this is Night Stalkers number 4. It came out in 1993 from Marvel Comics. That year is very significant. High sale of this book's only $9. And that was January of last year. That sale of this book was $3. The book's a cover price book. It's a dollar bin book. There's no real grades associated with it. So why is it in this list? Well, Hannibal King, the vampire companion of Blade from Marvel Comics, in a scene, in an end scene, he pays respect to Superman 1 month after Superman 75. So the writer and artist decided they were going to pay tribute to the death of Superman by putting a scene where Hannibal King is going to a cemetery, and it's very clear that he's going to pay respect to Superman.
That's awesome. This is another one that, like you said, it's probably in dollar bins everywhere and without people knowing why. This is one I'll check on Marvel Unlimited to see if it's actually there and to see if I can find that panel. It's very interesting.
I saw the panel. You could definitely see the panel. It's so cool. Like it says the most in one of the panels, it recognizes that he is the greatest superhero of all time. And then you could kind of tell it is Superman. Why Hannibal King beats me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. But they apparently the editors at Marvel said, sure, go for it.
Or they snuck it past them. Who knows? Like I love those insider stories, but
Well, I'm sure the editor, maybe not the editor in chief, but maybe the editor knew it because he had to edit the book.
yeah,
And he saw it and he was like, yeah, what the hell? It's, it's a big deal. It's significant.
no one's reading this anyway. You're going to be
Yeah, nobody's reading Night Stalker anyway. You're probably right in saying that too. All right, let's take a look at our next book. Batman Punisher Lake of Fire, 1994 for DC Comic Books. The high sale of this book is at $29 at a raw, and that was in January of this year. Last sale of this book was $5 and no grade. This book goes for about $6 at a very fine. No reported slabs. This features the first crossover event of Batman and Jean-Paul Valley and the Punisher. This was... I find it interesting that this was the very first crossover since, right? So now we're actually we have an official crossover event. And DC decides, hey, let's use our other Batman to meet Punisher. And everybody's going to love that one.
I don't get this one at all, especially when you're, like you said, you're going to decide to do a crossover and you're going to take, two characters that are essentially exactly the same. they're both killers. They both have no problem with violence. The interesting part of all these crossovers is you take somebody like Superman and Spider-Man, completely different powers, or the Hulk and Batman. So this one to me, it's almost like DC is just like, you know what? This is Batman now. Get used to it, people. Like, we're all in on this.
Yeah.
It's John Paul. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one I haven't read it.
Denny O'Neil wrote the story. It's fine. It's nothing crazy. But it was interesting at this point. What DC and Marvel decided to do was, you know what? You could have our character, do what you want with him. Maybe they had some rules of what you could and couldn't do, right? Couldn't do. But you produce it, right? And then we'll produce our version. So there's 2 copies of each. So this was the first of them, right? We're not going to go over all of them. There's not enough time to go over all of them. But this was the first one. It was Batman Punisher Lake of Fire was the first one to come out. It had some success because it's still a crossover.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, that's not the Batman we want to see fight with Punisher. Marvel said, oh no, we're using Batman.
Yeah.
And Punisher Batman, notice how they flipped the names, right? Punisher Batman, Deadly Nights, 1994 from Marvel Comics. This one has a high sale of $115 at a 9.8. January of this year it sold. The last sale of this book was $20 at no grade. It is also a fairly inexpensive book at $9, and 9.8 goes that same $115. This is the second crossover event, but it really is the first of Batman and Punisher, Bruce Wayne Batman. Also features Jigsaw and Joker in the book. I love this book. Chuck Dixon understood the story. He understood the character of Batman and the Punisher because, one, he wrote them both. And you got John Romita, his first DC book. So that also is part of that. And there's this amazing scene of the Punisher, and he sees the Joker, and the Joker's laying on the floor. They're in the alleyway. He sees the Joker, and you know what he's going to do. He ain't Batman.
Yeah.
So his plan at that moment was to kill the Joker. And the best part is the Joker thought he wasn't going to do anything because he doesn't know Punisher. Right? So Joker's like, whatever. But then he's realizing, oh, this guy's going to kill me.
Yeah.
Great storytelling. It's a book I definitely recommend people should read. I love that scene too. And John Romita Jr. does such a great job as drawing that scene with the Punisher just looking down the shadows. It's raining, all that fun. What makes John Romita's stuff great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely go check it out. It's another one of those easy, cheap to find books. Next book is DC versus Marvel Comics #1. This came in 1996 for DC and Marvel Comics. This is a joint effort. What they ended up doing is, as the issues go, there were 4 issues each. And what they did was like issue 1 and 3 was DC versus Marvel. Issue 2 and 4 was like Marvel versus DC. That's how they managed. They couldn't just, let it be, right?
I know.
Yeah. So 4-issue crossover of characters from Marvel and DC. First in continuity crossover. So this actually had lasting effects. It was meant to have lasting effects. And it occurred within their universes and mainstream history of each universes. That was the important thing. The other thing that was important about this book is the battles. So before I even go there, high sale of this book is $360 at 9.8. That was November of 2021. Last sale of this book was $6 at near mint. That's a lot of copies. The book goes for about $20, so that sale is actually a deal. It goes for about $20, very fine. 9.8 goes for about $68. Like I said, there's a lot of copies. It's easy to get. This also features the battles. The only thing I wasn't too thrilled about was the artwork. And Black Spider said it best. He understands me. The artwork in this book was subpar. Like there was some moments that was good, but then it was like, this is supposed to be a major crossover event, and you can't get me your best teams for it.
It's supposed to be the best of the best, like the best of your company. It should be the best of your creators. So I do agree with that. There was parts of this that could have been so much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Issue 3 is the big one. Issue 3 was the individual battles. So just came out 96, DC Marvel. Notice that it says Marvel versus DC. $90 at a 9.8 is the last high sale of this book, and that was December of 2024, so just this past year. Last sale of this book was $7 at a fine, which is also the cost for a raw fair market value. $90 is the fair market value at 9.8. This features the individual battles between DC and Marvel. It also features the first appearance of the Amalgam Universe heroes. Okay. So for those of you who don't know or who weren't born during this time, like Shane and myself were around during this time, this was a voting situation where the fans were allowed to vote the winner of the battles. Now, the battles were Superman, Hulk, Batman, Captain America, Spider-Man and Superboy, which I didn't understand that one, Wonder Woman and Storm, and Lobo versus Wolverine. And the outcomes were recorded in this issue. So my question for you, Shane, did you vote?
I did.
Did your guys win?
I can't remember for sure now, but I will let you know, and I'm sure you were going to bring this up as well. In the omnibus of this, they have the alternates for each battle. No. So the one that wasn't published and the reverse if the other character won.
I did vote, and for the most part, most of who I voted won. Right? Some of them were too obvious. Like Superman versus Hulk, I expect Superman to win, even though I think Hulk could have won. Right? Spider-Man, Superboy, it's mismatch. Spider-Man wins, even though I think Superboy could have probably beaten him. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. But how can you not pick Spider-Man over Superboy? I'm sorry. Wonder Woman beats Storm, of course. The one that I think was wrong, but I understand, was Wolverine Lobo. I don't think Wolverine can beat Lobo, my personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a weird one. And if anybody's interested, I know Legion of Comics, he does a really good review of the omnibus and kind of goes into all of the different battles and their outcomes. And yeah, I remember like right away flipping through the comic to see like who won each one as soon as it came out. I love these books.
Yeah, it's a fun book. So when this issue finished, then we got the Amalgam and the Universe. And let's go ahead and look over them, because what they ended up doing is that they did a series of 12 books. What they paused all the books, all of them. And they decided, hey, we're going to do the Amalgam universe, in which they did a combination of characters. So we had Storm and Wonder Woman. They became Amazon, and it was written by John Byrne with Terry Austin. The artwork by John Byrne, that was cool. You also have Assassins, which was a pretty interesting take on that one. That was fun. One of my personal favorites was Doctor Strange Fate, which I didn't know at the time. It wasn't two characters. It wasn't Doctor Strange and Doctor Fate. It was also Professor X that was part of it. I didn't know Professor X was part of it, but they added him into the mix as well. Then you had JLX, which that artwork was kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The biggest one of all of them was Legends of Dark Claw.
Yeah, for sure.
They had Jim Valiant do the art, and Jim Valiant was big at the time. He did a great job of this book. You know, he cared about it. Like, oh no, I'm going to make this count. So this is probably one of the most sought after book, with the exception of one which we'll get to in a little bit. Super Soldier, which I thought was a poor name choice for Captain America and Superman, especially the costume to me was like, yeah. You know, it was like, oh, we're just gonna make him look like Captain America on top, and then we're gonna give him the bottom look like Superman.
Yeah.
You know, we'll get to Lobo Duck in a minute. Bruce Wayne, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's a cool concept. I thought that was really cool. Here's one that I wasn't a big fan of. Bullets and Bracelets.
Yeah.
Steve Castle and Princess Diana, which they didn't even bother changing her name.
Yeah.
And she has the old costume. She has the costume of that era too. So it was like, yeah, we just screw it. Just do this one. Magneto and the Magnetic Men. Roger Cruz did that cover. It was actually pretty cool. Speed Demon, which I think that cover is awesome. It was my favorite cover of Speed Demon, where you had that. Speed Demon was a little bit of a couple of people too. It wasn't just, you know, Flash. It was Flash, the Demon, Ghost Rider was all part of it. So it was like a super mashup. Then you had Spider-Boy. So if you remember about a year or two when Spider-Boy first showed up, and we're talking about Spider-Boy, Marvel proper Spider-Boy, where everybody was picking up this book because they forgot that this is not the real Spider-Boy.
Yeah. Everybody was after it because it's the first Spider-Boy.
Yes. It became a spec book for all the wrong reasons. And then you had X-Patrol. And X-Patrol, oh my God, those names were terrible. They had Shatter Starfire. And instead of Beast and Chanley, it was Beastling. Like these, I felt like Jim Shooter, 13-year-old Jim Shooter wrote these stories. you know, so that was that one. Then we had the sequel. The sequel was DC Marvel All Access. I completely forgot about this. This came out in 1996 for DC Marvel Comics. The high sale of this book was $60 at 9.6, and that was in July of 2024. The last sale of this book was $4. That's also the fair market value, and 9.6 is the fair market value for the graded book. So this was a 4-issue limited series that marked the second official crossover of DC Marvel. The difference was that they were more focused on stories and character-driven stories. They had a really cool story with Jubilee and Robin, but it also led the way to the second wave of the Amalgam universe, all right, which gave us Dark Claw Adventures, which I thought was brilliant to do that. That it does, let's do Dark Claw, but let's do it in the style of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. I love that cover. I think it's one of my favorite covers. Another book that people really like to have and own. There was another cool one, Bat Thing, where you took the concept of Man Bat and then the Swamp Thing and Man Thing, and you just created Bat Thing. Another one that I thought was pretty interesting, that's Generation Hex, where you took Generation X mutants and then you put them with Jonah Hex, which I thought that was clever. That one was clever to me. JLX, Unleash with Fing Fang Flame.
Oh,
Here's another.
Did
Yeah,
they
go
just
ahead.
give up at that point?
They just ran out of names, man. It was like, screw it. You know? Here's my favorite one. Lobo the Duck, man. They couldn't even change his name. They just screw it. Let's just call him Lobo the Duck. I love that book. Trapped in a world never fragged. So there you go, Scotty. There's your Lobo Duck. I love it. That one I love. That one's a favorite of mine. And then Super Soldier, Man of War, featuring Sergeant Rock and the Howling Commandos.
That Lobo one, James Gunn is just weird enough
to make it happen.
There could be a mention of that wherever Lobo shows up. So if I was going to buy any of these ones for Spec, that would be one that I would be like, I'd be willing to pay, $5-10 for that one.
Oh, they're all cheap. All these books are cheap because it was highly produced. I didn't bother with the price tags of these books because they're super inexpensive. Even the Dark Claws, which are probably the most expensive out of the bunch, they're not expensive. Yeah. If you pay more than $20, you're paying too much. And that's a fact. Right? Challengers of the Fantastic. I think that was a cool concept because it's the world's greatest deaf. I think it was deaf cheaters. That's what it's called. So what I like about this one is that they just clearly went on the trope. They said, we know that the Fantastic Four were a bite off of the Challengers of the Unknown. So why not just make it? You know what I mean? This just did it. All right. Then we have the exciting X Patrol. What was cool about this one is that, again, we're back with the X Patrol. They're back. But the artwork's done by Bart Sears, which I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Great art.
Yeah. Iron Lantern, where you have Iron Man and Green Lantern become one. So that's cool. Right. And then we have this was another one. The Magnetic Men featuring Magneto. Well, the last book was Magneto and the Magnetic Men. Why don't we just have the Magnetic Men featuring Magneto? Showdown with the Sinister Society. Here's one that I really enjoy, and that's Spider-Boy Team Up, which features Legion 2099. So they took the concept. That's pretty cool. I like that one.
Yeah, I've never seen that one.
That one's really cool because it then mashed up the Legion of Superheroes, but it also mashed up 2099 universe. But since Superboy was part of the Legion of Superheroes, why not let's take Super Spider-Boy and make him part of the Legion? So I thought there was a lot of clever nods there. And another one that I personally like, Dorian and the New Asgards. Yes, they're called the Asgards.
That one slipped past editorial. They at least covered it with his head.
They covered it.
They got smart at the end and they're like, "Oh my god, who approved this?" And they're like, "We gotta change around this cover, guys. We gotta cover that."
Oh man! But it features artwork from.
Where's Cliff when you need him?
Oh my god! Well, he'll hate this book because it features the art of John Romita Jr., which he did a great job. I personally liked it. So, oh my goodness, it's so good. All right, now let's go to what I think is probably the best one of the bunch, and that's JLA Avengers #1. This book came out in 2003 for DC Marvel. High sale of this book is $145 at 9.8. That was in March of 2022. Last sale of this book was $8 near mint. Book goes about $12 near mint. Graded books go for about $34 at 9.8, which I think is totally undervalued. This is the much awaited multi-company crossover event originally planned in 1982 that has finally been realized with George Perez, the original artist attached to the first project as the penciler. He also has Kurt Busiek, who's doing the writing for it. It features the appearances of every Avenger and JLA member up to that time. This was the dream project that everyone was clamoring for. We wanted it. We were begging for it. They were trying, they were doing it, and then they couldn't agree with terms, and then they finally said, let's do it. This story to me is epic.
Yeah. Finally had the right combination of, you've got the heroes, you've got the right people doing it. This is the idea of the best companies, artists, storytellers. This book is great. This series is awesome.
Every single book has phenomenal art by George Perez. They're posters. You know what I mean? They're posters that everyone wants. Issue number 1, but issue number 4, man, that cover featuring Superman holding Mjolnir and Captain Shield, Captain Shield. 9.9 went for $400. I think that's very undervalued. For 9.9. This was in March of 2018. Last sale, this book was $24 near mint. That's pretty much where the fair market value of this book is. You could grab a 9.8 for about $94. This is just pure iconic.
Yeah. That cover does what comic book covers should do, is you want to read that book when you see the cover. Yeah.
Now, keep in mind that the prices of these books is fairly low, and that's because they were mass produced. With crossover events like this, they're bound to be mass produced because everybody wants them, right? So you fulfill those needs. That's why I'm so excited to see what's going to come soon. I already saw an image of Dark Claw, so we're getting Dark Claw back. So I saw an image of Dark Claw. Now I'm super stoked. I can't wait to see what their actual plan is and really how they're going to take it. Are they going to give us the best writers? Are they going to give us the best artists? Like, I want to see Dan Mora doing some of this stuff. I want to see Jorge Jimenez doing some of this stuff. Yeah. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see this up-and-comer artist that, unfortunately, is not as good as all these other guys. I want to see the best of the best on these books.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. I'm going to put you on the spot. DC Marvel crossover that we haven't really seen yet. What do you want to see?
That's the hard part, because Avengers Justice League we haven't really seen yet. Even though I didn't touch on it, there is a book where Deadpool actually gets to meet Deathstroke.
Yeah.
Which is, it does exist. I didn't cover it, but it does exist. I want us to be able to see something like that. I want to see something where with the X-Men, right? Maybe a new X-Men Teen Titans, but I want to see it drawn by Jim Lee.
Yeah.
That's what I want to
see. Deadpool and She-Hulk. That would be interesting to me.
Or Deadpool and Lobo.
Yeah. Any of the, I was thinking more She-Hulk because of the whole fourth wall thing. They're both kind of known to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Deadpool and
Lobo. Deadpool and She-Hulk are in the same universe. I just caught you. They're both Marvel.
Oh yes, yeah.
It already happened. Now I'm thinking about it. You caught me there for a second.
Yeah.
Now I'm losing all my viewers. They're all gone. It's over. No, but Deadpool, Deathstroke, or Deadpool Lobo. I think Deadpool Lobo is probably more in tune to what you were saying.
Let's frame it up as a Deadpool and She-Hulk with two other DC characters.
Yeah, Deadpool and She-Hulk with two other DC characters. Well, we'll throw in Lobo, but I don't know of any other comedic characters in the DC universe that you could throw like that.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one.
It'll be hard, you know. So I don't know how to do it, but this book is awesome to me. I love this book. It can't, you know. I'll go back and read it. It's just so great.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So there you have it. There's a creator spotlight. I hope you enjoy us looking back at some DC Marvel crossover events. Some were official, some weren't. They were all fun to talk about. And I think this is a video that you definitely should like. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed before. Let me know in the comments which crossover event you enjoyed, Also, let me know what crossover event you would like to see happen. I'm really interested in seeing that. I'm also doing what's called a CPI over at Go Collect with all these books in there. So that's currently being made right now, and I'm going to showcase that to you guys once I'll tell you next week if it's up and running. But thanks for watching for this one. This was a fun one, Shane. This was absolutely a fun one. Next week, we're going to go back to our traditional creator spotlight. And I do know who is it going to be, but I'll let you guys vote on it. So make sure you go vote in the poll for it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more comic content. Check out these other videos for even more insight, and I'll see you at the next one. Excelsior.